Hello, hello, hello. I think it is time to start. Well, thank you very much for attending the session. uh, just let me do one thing, yeah. So the subject today, what we are going to discuss is the global trade fragmentation and neo-protectionism, lessons from the past, current challenges, and implications for the Central Asia's regional and global value chain integration efforts. Oh, such a word-heavy subject just after the lunch. I can imagine, ladies and gentlemen. It, don't worry, we have got such fantastic experts sitting with us. They will make things easy, and you will take a lot of good insights to take away with you. So, post-lunch, let's get cheered up. Give us applause to yourself and to the wonderful team, please. Well, taking, okay, one interesting development. I was told by the organizers to do the event in two languages, English and Russian. Нам надо будет по-русски говорить, потому что лучше, наверное, на английском, потому что у вас есть вот эта штука, вы можете слушать. Но интересно, господин Ху будет говорить на китайском. И если кто-то из вас не знает еще китайского, то, пожалуйста, используйте это хорошее оборудование. Okay. Taking our cue from the word past and trade, while we sit in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, the country that played a huge role in global trade history. I'm of course referring to the ancient Silk Road. Cities like Tashkent, Samarkand, Bukhara, were once upon a time the most famous, one of the few of the most famous cities in the world. But everything got disrupted in 1453 when the Ottoman Empire decided to stop this trade route. But around that time, very interesting, that we human beings started making stronger boats which could take long voyages. And in 1492, Christopher Columbus was sent to look for India, the country where the gold and spices, the riches were there. But he made a mistake. He went to America. And instead of gold, he brought tobacco, he brought potato and corn. The Spanish royals did not like it. He was jailed. But in 1498, Vasco da Gama finally reached out to India, the place of riches, and he got the real wealth. So the new trade route started between Europe and Asia. Then came Industrial Revolution and the colonial era that transformed the global trade again. Advanced ships came in, and the colonial commodities, so-called, we call it tea, coffee, sugar, cocoa, opium, started going global. And soon, the world market were flooded with English tea, Italian coffee, or Belgian chocolates, when not a single raw material is produced in Europe. But came Second World War, and the colonial era gradually died, and started globalization. In 1950s to 70s, America evolved in the global trade map. And then came the Asian giants like Japan and Korea. But it is only 85 to 95, 1985 to 95, a big leap happened when almost 3.5 billion people of that time came out of the cultural economy to the globalization wave. Came India, came China, came Indonesia, and the CIS region came out to the globalization. So why I'm talking about this evolution process, because all along in this last 500 years, we have seen that trade scenario was disrupted in many different ways. And then came digitization, when it became easy to do trade with your laptop. Companies like Amazon and Alibaba made their mark, and today we know that how easy it has become from the days of Christopher Columbus. But during those time of globalization, these organizations, multilateral organizations like OECD, ITC, EIB, WTO came into play to regulate and facilitate. So, and they are in the panel today. And when we talk about logistics and digital world, we also have got a very important company called ZTO from China on this field. So, and starting from the days of ancient Silk Route till today, of the days of cryptocurrency, we have had lot of upheavals, lot of disruptions, but trade continued. So I sit with you today that we all know that we are going through a lot of turmoils in the trade scenario today, but still trade will continue, and we will face the challenges with resilience and optimism. To give you a very brief introduction of myself, that last 30 years, we have been specializing in developing trade connection with the CIS countries, with the wider world, with a regional office in CIS in Kyiv, Ukraine. Since then, we have created a supply chain with CIS countries, with 100 countries in the world in all different all continents, starting from Malawi to Mexico, Japan to Jamaica. And now, very recently, we started, I think the slides, if you could show, we started a consultancy and advisory company called Rishi Partners, based in Rotterdam, who are giving services to multilateral organizations like ITC, UNECE, BRD. And we also design development strategies and trade capacity building and provide training both in Russian as in English. With a global presence in Dubai, India, Netherlands, we remain committed to fostering sustainable trade growth across the world. So, coming to the panelists and the subject, a lot of changes are taking place today. Let's not talk about the changes, but what is important for the stakeholders who are sitting in front of us is how these changes are going to affect our trade life, and what need to be done to mitigate these challenges. So we have got very eminent panel, which you could see there. So I will introduce each and every one when they talk. The first, I would request Mr. Inamjon Abdurrahmanov. He is the Director General of the Foreign Trade, the Ministry of Investment, Industry and Trade of the Republic of Uzbekistan, and an alumnus of London School of Economics. Inamjon, the floor is yours. You have got 5 minutes to reflect your thoughts on the subject.
Thank you, Mr. Sura, for the floor. Dear participants, distinguished guests, it's an honor for me to be here to take a part in this panel session on the behalf of the Ministry of Investment, Industry and Trade of the Republic of Uzbekistan, which is responsible for developing Uzbekistan foreign trade policy at all. I would like to thank everyone also being here in this Tashkent International Investment Forum and for your interest in today's discussion. Today's discussion is very important because global trade is changing very fast and also many countries are changing their trade policy and how they manage their supply chains. In this context, Uzbekistan is also improving its position as a reliable and open trading partner, actively working to expand foreign trade and diversify its export market. I would like to share with you some slides. So for this slide, I will not go further because I think most of you know already about this basic information about the Uzbekistan. So also I would like to share with some economic key information. So in 2024, our GDP exceeded $115 billion with 6.5% growth. And also our goal by 2030 is clear. So we aim to double our economy and reach a GDP to $160 billion. And also we continue to prioritize our macroeconomic stability, openness to investment and integration into global markets, and also active accession to the WTO. So these figures shown on the slide clearly demonstrate the scale and the speed of our progress. And also Uzbekistan's trade volumes and export capacities are growing very fast, rapidly, and that's why I would like to share also with some numbers. Where is this? Oh, sorry. Thank you. In 2024, Uzbekistan's total trade turnover reached to $62 billion, including over $26 billion in export to more than 150 countries, with strong growth observed in the EU market, and also smoothly moving to the Middle East countries, and also the countries like China, Russia. So you can see from this, the slide, the main, the export countries, so which is leading by Russia, China, and also I would like to take your attention to the numbers. Our goal by 2030 is to reach $45 billion export. So we had an export in 2024-26, so our goal is to double it also, almostly. And also to increase our export companies from 6,500 to 15,000 companies. So we can see here also the real shift, more finished products and more value-added goods. So you can see from this slide also. And also our export structure is evolving. Over 35% of export is value-added and finished goods such as textiles, electronics, and also finished food products. So as this chart shows, you can see the share of finished products in export is rising very fast. And due to trade wars and the trade policy of some game changer countries, so the supply chain issues around the world, many global brands are looking for more stable and reliable sourcing partners. So we have already started to work with the companies like Inditex, Hugo Boss, the North Face, and they have already started to place their order in Uzbekistan. The next slide, please. Thank you. And Uzbekistan's trade growth is not accidental, so it's a result of targeted reforms and strategic policies aimed at making our export more competitive. So there is also the governmental support, the financial support, and the non-financial support. And as you know, because of the, so we are taking some steps to the access to the WTO. That's why we have all the abolished our some measures like compensating transport costs, so you know very well it. That's why we have already developed some other alternative measures for our exporters, and also we are focusing on the non-financial support for our companies, and the steps like to obtain certificates and standards for our companies to get to the EU market. So as you know, Uzbekistan's GSP Plus status provides duty-free access to the EU market for over 6,200 products. So that's why our export also to EU market from 2020 is increased by 5 times. So it was $245 million in 2020, and as 2024, this number is already reached to $1.15 billion. So it's very fast growth. We are also expanding our cooperation under the free trade agreement and also under the preferential trade agreement with the countries like Turkey, countries like China, South Korea, and also Pakistan, Mongolia. Also, we are now considering to sign a preferential trade agreement. I mean, just providing some analysis with them and some feasibility studies with these countries like Vietnam, Morocco. So our goal is clear, building an export ecosystem which is modern and connected to international trade networks. Our efforts are transforming the country into a trusted sourcing hub for global markets, and we welcome all partners to join us in this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Inamjan. Thank you very much for your very important introduction of what your activities are. I am just informed that Mr. Hu, the president of ZTO CWST Group of China, he has some urgent meeting to attend after this session. So I was requested to give him the floor just after Mr. Inamjan. And to Mr. Hu is the president of ZTO CWST Group, a leading logistics company with extensive leadership experience in ZTO Express, and he brings a big expertise in cross-border logistics. So let's listen to Mr. Hu.
尊敬的各位嘉宾，朋友们，大家下午好，我是中通快递的胡向亮，今天非常荣幸的能够受邀参加国际论坛，在这里向各位介绍我们中通快递以及我们与乌兹别克斯坦合作的美好愿景。中通快递成立于2002年，总部在上海，中国上海。我们是中国领先的综合物流企业，核心业务涵盖快递、快运、原仓、跨境、冷链等生态圈，在各个领域都有显著的发展和成就。2016年10月27号，我们在美国纽约证券交易所上市。2020年9月29号又在香港2次上市，成为首家中美两地上市的快递企业。我们致力于推动供应链效率的提升，降低物流成本，升级用户体验，通过一盘货、相应全域、一体化高效履约、一站式深度服务，我们实现了多品类、多品牌、多渠道的库存融合，打通了多行业、多场景、多环节的全链路，让仓配环节无缝对接。今天我很荣幸和大家讨论本次的议题。 第一，中通快递的海外拓展与应对策略，在全球贸易环境日益复杂的背景下，中通快递作为中国领先的综合物流服务企业，积极拓展海外市场，探索应对贸易碎片化和保护主义的策略。中通快递通过技术创新和智能化管理，提升了物流效率和服务质量。在中亚地区，中通快递将利用其强大的物流网络和供应链的整合能力和经验，帮助当地企业降低成本，提升竞争力。第二，对中亚区域和全球价值链整合的影响，通过资源整合和区域合作，提升自身在全球价值链中的地位。中通快递在中亚地区的布局，不仅能促进当地物流基础设施的升级，还为区域内的贸易流通提供了有力的支撑。这种模式为中亚区域在全球价值链整合中提供了新的思路和路径。未来的展望，今天我们来到乌兹别克斯坦，带着合作的诚意和对未来的美好憧憬，我们看到了乌兹别克斯坦市场的潜力，也感受到乌兹别克斯坦的热情和诚意。我们希望通过智能化的分拣中心共建、清关系统的联合开发，以及物流行业的合资运营、技术赋能和长效协作等多种合作模式，与乌兹别克斯坦相关企业和部门能深度合作，共同投入资源、技术和人力，实现风险共担、利益共享。我们希望在乌兹别克斯坦搭建规模化、智能化、信息化的跨境贸易体系，为乌兹别克斯坦带来先进的物流技术和管理经验，帮助乌兹别克斯坦快速标准化的仓储仓配网络建设，为跨境 B2C、B2B 做好基础建设，推动物流行业的发展，将助力乌兹别克斯坦的工商贸流通和电商行业发展，增加国家的财政收入，提升乌兹别克斯坦的就业率，带动制造业、农牧业的快速发展。谢谢大家。
Thank you very much, Mr. Hu, for your comments. I understand that you are in a hurry because you have to attend the next meeting. So, logistics is very important an issue for Uzbekistan and Central Asia being landlocked region. And of course, the digital connectivity can make a big difference. And the kind of projects Mr. Hu and his company ZTO is involved is very much called for. Thank you. And then I would love to give the floor to Jean-Sébastien from ITC. He is from Geneva. It is a UN WTO joint venture. And Sebastian has got 25 years of experience at ITC, supporting private sector developments in emerging economies. His work focuses on strengthening business advocacy with governments to improve policies, regulations, and trade negotiations. Currently, he leads the EU-funded projects helping countries like Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan to join WTO. So, Sebastian, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So maybe just to contextualize the discussions, I just wanted to bring up 3 points regarding the dynamics or the economic profile of the region. As we probably now all realize, Central Asia is increasingly recognized as a dynamic and fast-growing region. And I think it has demonstrated over the past few years a quite sustained level of economic growth, as it was again demonstrated by the representative from the ministry. And I think the World Bank for 2025-2026 projections envisage a growth of 4.7% for the whole region, clearly outpacing the global subdued growth of 2.7%. So that is the first figure that I want to throw. The second is that FDI inflows to the region, they have faced some kind of challenges over the past recent years. However, some Central Asian countries have seen a notable rebound in investment. And one interesting dimension is that intra-regional investments are on the rise. In 2024, they have increased by 40%. So that's another interesting feature. The third one, which relates to, as we can see in the context of our project in particular, is that there is a continued development, implementation of economic and structural reforms. And we see that particularly in Uzbekistan and in Kazakhstan. And the objective of those reforms are primarily to reduce the state footprint in the economy, to try to increase the role of the private sector, but also to diversify the economy. And numbers of reforms relate to elimination of some licenses or making the process easier. It relates to the business registrations, taxation procedures, and so on. So I think those efforts is a recognition that in order to attract investment, those countries need to make sure that their business environment, the climate environment, becomes more predictable, more transparent, and potentially more rule-based. If those countries want to connect with the regional value chain or the global value chain for that matter. So I think that is a recognition of that, and this is why we are seeing those endeavors, particularly in a time when those countries want to diversify, so to get out of the traditional sectors. So those are the 3, I would say, very quick, brief piece of information that contextualize, I think, the discussions. And in this context, I'd like to make 3 points. One, however, the pathway to connect or to connect to those regional or global value chains are not uniforms. Indeed, those countries have different features, different market access, different level of economic development, but also different trade openness and also infrastructure. But beyond those elements, I think those disparities are further compounded by the fact that there are divergent regulatory frameworks among them that govern trade and investment flows, not only within the region, but vis-à-vis international standards. And that is a problem when you want to connect to global value chain. For instance, the region is not yet fully integrated into what we call the multilateral trading system. And as such, you lose some of the benefit that this multilateral trading system provides. And among the countries that are member of that multilateral trading system, basically the World Trade Organization, yes, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan are already members. And the WTO is an institution that sets the global rules, as you probably know, that govern trade, but whose rule books does provide predictability to investors and businesses. And I think in the context of this forum, it's important to remind everyone. Yes, Uzbekistan is currently negotiating its accession to the WTO, and we are supporting them in that endeavor. And Turkmenistan has just started, and we are also supporting them in that endeavor. But the point is that this uneven alignment with international trade rules create gaps in policies, creates inconsistency in regulatory framework, and hence, as I said, for countries to connect to global value chain, it does bring problems. And therefore, it limits the ability of the region to become, or to become a trade hub and also to take advantage of, or to realize rather, its strategic advantage of being located at the middle or at the center of the trade route between Europe and Asia. The second point I wanted to make is that beyond the World Trade Organization, more and more trade and investment flows are increasingly being shaped by a growing ball of bilateral trade agreements, of regional trade agreements, or plurilateral arrangements. And I can mention a few of them. The one we've been exposed to at least are the ones, for instance, the Enhanced Partnership and Cooperation Agreement between the EU and Kazakhstan. A similar one is being discussed with Uzbekistan. I can also mention the Strategic Partnership on Critical Raw Materials between the EU and Uzbekistan. And these agreements, the nature differs, the scope differs, some of them are binding, others are not. But these agreements also require a regulatory alignment in order to fully unlock the potential that they bring. And my third point is that it's about ITC, my organization. This is where we come in. And we were established more than 60 years ago. And our mandate is to support countries to connect, or rather to support SMEs to connect with regional or global value chains. And we work at three levels. We work at the policy level. We work at the BSOs level, what we call Business Support Organization, so chambers of commerce and so on. And we work at SME level. Here today I'm talking about the policy level, that work that we do. And our angle is to make sure that the policies and the regulations that are put in place reflect the needs, the specific needs of the SMEs, to help them advocate their interest, and to ensure that the regulations, the policies that are being adopted reflect their needs in the process. So in short, we help in improving the business environment for trade and investment purposes. So in Central Asia, what we've been doing lately, we are supporting countries to accede to the WTO. In the past, we also supported those that have acceded to the WTO, but we're also supporting countries to improve their business environment and to align them with the needs of the SMEs. And we're also trying to support the alignment, rather than the alignment, I should say, leveraging international standards to ensure that the economic domestic objectives are pursued. I will leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. As you see that we have got panelists from different geographies and different organizations. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's your chance to listen to them from the different geographies, how this subject looks like to them and in the context of the mandate of their organizations. So next, I would request Andrea Clerici, the Director of Department of Corporate Finance and Global Activities, EIB, the European Investment Bank. He also has got 25 years of banking experience, and both in public and private sectors, and across the experience in different financial hubs like Milan, Frankfurt, London, and Luxembourg. So Andrea, we are eager to listen to your comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, let me thank you, moderator and the organizers, for inviting the European Investment Bank and more broadly the European Union to take part of this forum. Let me just take 1 minute to explain who the European Investment Bank is. Sometimes we are called as the best kept secret in Europe because we are somehow hidden in the woods of Luxembourg, as it was just said. The European Investment Bank has a dual role of a European institution and a multilateral bank. It is actually the largest multilateral bank in the world. We have some 93 billion of signatures as volume every year. Most of this is concentrated within the Union, but 9 to 10 billion of the activities are done outside the Union, and this is an increasing share of what we do worldwide. We are owned by the 27 member states of the Union, but we are independent in a sense that everything that we lend, we do take it from the debt capital market by issuing bonds. As we are a AAA institution and we are a not-for-profit organization, we tend to pass the financial advantage that we get from the market to our counterparts, thus giving fairly good conditions in terms of tenor and pricing to the counterparts that we finance. And it's particularly nice to be here this afternoon because in these forums we are also a lot talking about values that we share. We're talking about openness, dialogue, and partnership in a situation where we can see every day this is somehow challenged on a worldwide scale. And at the European Investment Bank, we believe that resilience, diversification, and connectivity are essential today to navigate the era of global trade fragmentation as we are living. And the fact that countries, as those in Central Asia, which are somehow constrained by the geography, there is a need for them to cooperate more and to become a regional player when it comes to supply chain, the energy transition, and sustainable connectivity. And it's not by coincidence that we are today here in Uzbekistan, because the country, as it was clearly shown before, it's somehow moving up to take a leadership role in the region as a regional anchor to East and West. When we talk about trade at the EIB, we look at trade on a not different, but a particular way. We look at trade and we like to call it resilient trade. What do we mean by resilient trade is that when we talk about trade, we do not only need to have infrastructure. Trade per se demands to have also reliable energy system, to have smart logistics, to have digital integration, and an investment environment that can attract long-term private investments, where the key word here is long-term. Of course, what is needed is a long-term partnership in this field. And in this context, the EIB is very much happy to work alongside the lines of the EU Global Gateway Agenda to support countries in this region to scale up the effort to sustainable infrastructure. And 12 countries like Uzbekistan to become a regional production and innovation hub and not merely some transit corridor. In this respect, we welcome the fact that Uzbekistan in particular benefit from a dedicated multi-annual indicative program. It was mentioned, 2021-2027, which is supporting the enhanced partnership and cooperation agreement with a strong emphasis of sustainable economic growth and the rule of law. Uzbekistan ambitious reform agenda, the ongoing WTO accession, and the active participation to regional platform are clear signs that provide for comfort to those willing to invest in a country. Of course, not everything is perfect. If I may say so, there are challenges, and the challenges persist in terms of, for instance, tariffs, non-tariff barriers, logistic inefficiencies, and skill gaps. But all these are somehow recognized and being tackled. In this context, the bank is willing to be here and open to help. We are scaling up our activities in the country. We have signed a host country agreement with the government, and this is for us the founding, let's say, principle to have a representative office in the country, which we hope will open by year end, and as there will be a direct active role of the bank in the region. But just to conclude, I would like to go back to your first question and to see how do we see the possibility to mitigate the challenges that we see today. And I would like to give you, let's say, out of the experience of the bank, 4 points that we would focus on as a sort of follow-up practical solution to try and mitigate. The first one is to invest in cross-border infrastructure, prioritize multimodal transport corridor, digital custom systems, and energy interconnectivity will reduce trade costs and improve reliability. The second one is to support SME competitiveness by expanding access to finance of these companies, training, export readiness programs, and especially support women and youth enterprises. The third is to promote regional integration. We are in Europe, I would say, an example worldwide. We need to harmonize the standards, reduce non-tariff barriers, and boost the regional value chains to create scale and resilience. Last but not least, and obviously I say it from the EU Climate Bank, leverage green finance. This is particularly important because the use of green finance tool modernizes industries, attracts sustainable investments, and in particular, as far as renewable energy and resources efficiency is concerned, it's of utmost importance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andre. Andre, Next, on my left, Celeste. She is the policy analyst of OECD Eurasia. She is having a very diverse international background, having served in as economic attaché at the French embassy in Uzbekistan. So she knows the country well. She also speaks Russian very fluently. And we just found that Inamjon and she, they both are alumni from London School of Economics. So Celeste, it's your turn to share your observations.
Thank you, Sobra, for this kind introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here and to also bring some gender diversity to this panel. I would like to thank the MIIT for their kind invitation and for this impressive forum. So a lot has already been said on the topic, so I would like to talk about one thing in particular that's very relevant for Central Asia. In the current context, where does Central Asia stand and what can it do in the turbulent global trade environment? My key message here is that trade facilitation is key for Central Asia to prosper. First, I would like to give you a bit of context. So if colleagues can move to the first slide, please. We know that the uncertain global context has a negative impact on trade with protectionism through tariffs, subsidies, and industrial policies to support local production increasing, especially in advanced economies, which are leading to new trade barriers and retaliatory measures. To give a bit of figures, taking into account zero-rated items as well as tariffs on United States imports from other countries, trade equivalent to 2.2% of world GDP will be affected by the new tariffs. Also, latest OECD data estimates that global GDP growth is projected to slow from 3.3% in 2024 to 2.9% in 2025 and 2026. So why is trade facilitation important in this context? First of all, perhaps it would be good to clarify what I mean by trade facilitation. Trade facilitation refers to measures that streamline and simplify technical and legal procedures for products to cross the border. Colleagues, could you move to the next slide, please? OECD work on trade facilitation has allowed economies worldwide to identify strengths and challenges of their border procedures and to prioritize areas for action. Trade facilitation is essential as it reduces trade costs, disproportionately benefits SMEs, and delivers high returns on investment, and is particularly important for developing economies which tend to rely more on exports than on domestic consumption for growth. The OECD has found that trade costs have declined by up to 5% over the last decade, solely due to improvements in the efficiency of border processes, with strongest effects in lower income and lower middle income economies. I would like to share with you latest OECD trade facilitation indicators results, which show that Central Asia is the top reformer region in the Europe and Central Asia region across the 2022-2024 period. So as you can see, Uzbekistan has made the most progress in trade facilitation since 2022, while Kazakhstan is still the regional leader in performance. So these are very positive findings, and I must say I am very happy and to be showing the region as a lead reformer. Yet there's still some potential for Central Asia to improve its trade opportunities. So we see that there's been a lot of progress, but Central Asia is particularly vulnerable to the current setback in global trade because of its significant reliance on the export of commodities. So in terms of latest progress, what we've noticed in our work is that the region has made a lot of efforts in digitalizing customs and transit procedures through the creation of single windows. Most countries of the region now have trade info platforms with easy access towards trade and transport related formalities. Uzbekistan is actually the first country of Central Asia to have adopted EU weight and dimension standards, and also recently liberalized transit permits with Tajikistan, which is an important step forward towards regional integration. a point that was mentioned by my colleague on this panel from the EIB. Going forward, though, there is still a lot to be done. As you can see that Central Asia here is still far from OECD average and best performance. Why so? The main challenges that we see in our work with the region relate to the prevalence of paper-based procedures on border crossing points, the lack of inter-border agency coordination, difficulty in obtaining trucking permits for companies which have to ship goods from one country to the other, sanitary and phytosanitary inspections at the border. We can be too slow and cumbersome with several government bodies involved. And last but not least, corruption remains an issue at the borders across the Central Asia region. I would like to, in the sake of time, I would like to stop here, but my key message today is that a coordinated approach to trade facilitation can substantially reduce costs for the region to trade, to boost trade turnover and foster growth. Central Asia's commitment to regional cooperation will be key to navigate today's fragmented trade landscape and securing long-term integration into global value chains. Thank you.
Thank you, Celeste. Thank you very much for your comments and your activity. You know, when I was preparing for this panel for you, ladies and gentlemen, these threats of trade fragmentation and neo-protectionism, you can always fight if you are strong, if you are growing, right? And going through the mandates of these organizations who are sharing the panel, I found that they have got 5 growth areas where they are strong. They are working very effectively. And in this regard, I came across a very interesting interview of the president of the World Bank, Ajay Banga, where he said, I quote, "Development is how we compete, grow, and stay secure. Private investment flows only where the right conditions exist with predictable return," unquote. So this is where the challenge lies. And going through these mandates of these organizations, I found that they are active in these 5 growth areas. 1, diversification of industries and value addition of products. That means moving beyond the commodity dependence. Market expansion, reducing over-reliance on the traditional markets. Regional integration, that is strengthening regional economic ties. Logistics development, which is hard, soft, and digital. And HR development, human resource development, developing the skilled professionals to go global. So taking this cue, Mr. Inamjan, I have got a question for you. Yesterday in the plenary, our esteemed president made a very interesting statement that investment made on people returns 100 times. So with this young and dynamic population of Uzbekistan, which is a very tremendous strength, and to make this workforce ready for the global trade and investment, what are the initiatives or the policies you are putting in place for the upliftment of the human resources and using of the local youth for going global? Yeah.
Thank you very much for your question. Yes, actually, I think it's about 60% of the population of Uzbekistan is under the age of 30. So it means we are very strong also, I mean, on this field. Because it's even for the economy, for the industry is a very important key, and that's why we're working on this, of course, to build some, to develop the human resources, and to train our, I mean, the companies, and not only the, I mean, the employee, the governmental employee, but also we are focusing on the companies, I mean, the human resources. That's why we are, of course, organizing with GIZ, UNDP, and ITC, some, I mean, the workshops, webinars, training programs, and also in the regions of the Uzbekistan. And also, we are also working very closely with the e-commerce platforms like Alibaba, Ozon, and also Wildberries in the regions. So what, recently we have also signed the MOU with Alibaba to run 100, I mean, the companies program in order to foster, I mean, their export, to teach them, to train them, and of course we'll provide also this kind of the program in the regions, not only in the capital, I mean, but it's important for us that we have to teach, we have to, I mean, develop their skills in the region. And also we are working very closely with the Russian, I mean, the Foreign Trade Academy. So we are also organizing some short-term and medium-term seminars. And also we are working on organizing the master's programs, I mean, with the dual diplomas with Tashkent State University and some other, I mean, the foreign universities like this, I mean, the Foreign Trade Academy, Russian. And also we are working on establishment the Foreign Trade Center, which will focus on the non-financial support for the companies. And of course, there will also be the programs in order to develop the skills of the, I mean, the human resources. That's our, I mean, the initiatives.
Yeah, that's very important because you may have a lot of potential, but if the human resource is not ready to communicate to the world effectively, and the world cannot effectively communicate, things
And
will not
yes,
happen.
and one more addition that we are also focusing on the women entrepreneurship, you know.
Oh yes.
So I think it's now the share of the women entrepreneurship is reaching to 35 to 40% on the e-commerce platforms. As I mentioned, the main, which is, I mean, the working here, Uzum, I mean, the local one is Uzum Market, and also the foreign one is like Ozon, Wildberries, and Alibaba. So that's also the important point for us.
Very, very important. Thank you very much, Mr. Inanjan. I understand that these international best practices are needed to be brought into Uzbekistan, and ITC is involved in that. Sebastian, this IFDA, the Investment Facilitation and Development Agreement, which you promote in WTO, though I understand that it is not yet a part of the WTO rule book. But would you tell that how IFDA can make Uzbekistan's WTO accession more advantageous?
Okay. Yes, absolutely. Yes, Uzbekistan is on one way is negotiating its accession to the WTO, and the chief negotiator is actually, as we speak, in Geneva. He is having bilateral negotiations with numbers of countries, but he is also there to attend a very key meeting, which is called a working party meeting, which is a milestone in the accession process, which is to project to the whole WTO members where does Uzbekistan stand in that process. Ultimately, WTO accession is about, and that's the only initiative that countries can take to bring to the table all relevant ministries and ministers to develop together coherent policies and regulations with a convergent objectives. And that requires quite a lot of political willingness, support, but everyone agrees that ultimately those that will benefit from that are the investors, the private sectors. It is very much about making the business environment more transparent, rule-based, and predictable. Predictable at three levels, I would say. One, it's about providing predictable in terms of externally, so providing a more predictable or secure access to markets. I can give you an example. Vietnam, before becoming a member of the WTO, they were subject to a 5% increase cap in exporting textile to the US market. once they became a member, they were not subject to this cap anymore, and that actually enables the textile industry in Vietnam to expand exponentially. So it's about, again, providing predictability externally. Second, it also provides predictability, I would say, in terms of resilience, and probably that's very much related to the dynamics that we see these days in relation to the trade policy of certain WTO members. But still, a number of countries are making sure that the principles of the WTO remains the benchmark, and countries are not able to impose unilateral measures preventing access to markets or targeting specific countries. There are some instruments, though, which is called trade remedies, but those are very much conditions and clearly articulated. But the principle is that you do get predictability. You do get, as an SME, through the WTO, you do have access to a safe harbor when you enter into global trade. So that's a second layer of predictability. The third one is domestically, and probably that's the most relevant for investors. Why? Because as you become a member of the WTO, as a country, you actually lock in the level of openness of your trade regime into an international instrument. And whatever government succeeds, afterwards, you cannot go back, you cannot backtrack from the commitment that have been taken. The acceding government, though, has the ability to leverage the accession process to its own interest. So this is where we are kind of supporting Uzbekistan, but it does provide predictability for investors because principles are very much embedded within the accession process, within the WTO agreements, within the WTO rulebook, as we call it, and countries are bound by that. And investors are very much looking at the benefit of it in terms of providing security, predictability in the business environment, in the investment climate that stem from this process. So that's why I think WTO remains very much relevant today, if not even more relevant today than before. Now, coming to the IFDA, this particular instrument that you have mentioned, which is the Investment Facilitation for Development Agreement, this is not yet within the WTO rulebook. You still have 126 countries that are supporting this instrument. And what the raison d'etre of this instrument is actually to improve the investment climate and to facilitate investment procedures for investment. So that is very much the reason. And in a nutshell, what it does, it establishes a benchmark, a clear global benchmark standards of the provision that the country needs to put in place in order to facilitate investment. So it is not about investment protection. It is not about market access. It is not about disputes between states and investors. Those are very sensitive issues that are not being covered by this agreement. This agreement is all about making procedures more transparent, more streamlined, so more effective, to facilitate coordination across agencies. And God, we know how difficult it may be for an investor to come in the country, to be faced with multiple requests, to be faced with multiple same level of information to be shared. So it is about this kind of things. So it's about making those procedures simpler, safer, and cheaper. So that is the raison d'etre. And last thing I would like to say is that this instrument remains very much relevant for the SMEs, because SMEs are the ones that suffer the most in terms of how to navigate in an environment where you have a change of rules, where there is uncertainty, or where there is regulatory complexity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sebastian, for this interesting reply and detailed reply. And when it comes to, you mentioned about the chief negotiator who is in Geneva today. Yeah, Uzbekistan is doing very high speed development in accession to WTO, and anybody who want to remain in pace with it, you can check the LinkedIn page of Mr. Azizbek Urunov, where he puts us informed that what are the developments there. And yeah, Andrea, you mentioned about that your investment projects for the global, the connectivity of this Central Asia. Yeah, because being landlocked, which is very important. And last time in this TIIF, I made an interesting comment that if it is a landlocked region, it is not the end of the story. Switzerland is a landlocked country, but their cheese and their chocolates have reached all over the world. And even if banana, perishable product like banana can come from Jamaica to Uzbekistan, Uzbek shops. So it is all about effective handling of logistics. So EIB and the global gateway strategy of EU, you are contributing, and you are doing not only investment in the middle corridor as well as the digital layer of it. Would you like to throw some light more in detail, Andrea, on these two aspects? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I can be fairly concise on the answer. Of course, we are working on the things that I mentioned at the beginning, and in particular to sustainable infrastructure. And we are supporting new trade routes, and in particular, I want to mention the fact that we have signed a 500 million euro MOU with Uzbekistan, and today we are working on two major operations in the infrastructure, focusing on transport corridors, and in particular a section of the M39 and a section of the A300. This last highway links the southern part of Uzbekistan with the western part, and then going up to Kazakhstan and the Caspian Sea. And it's a very strategic part of the middle corridor that you mentioned. But as EIB, of course, sustaining this infrastructure for us is not only improving physical infrastructure, we are also looking at everything which is around the infrastructure per se. It's also enhancing the climate resilience, the safety, and the digital integration. You mentioned about the landlocked situation. Of course, it is important. That's why we have signed also a separate MOU with Kazakhstan, with Kyrgyzstan, with Tajikistan, all of them tailored to the Trans-Caspian integration. And it is essential for us that all of these countries work together to have a clear and common vision to perform and to allow for sustainable growth in the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andre. Yeah, one quick question to Celeste, because you mentioned that still Central Asian parameters are far away from OECD. Maybe you could throw some light, what is needed to improve these parameters and reach out to the standard of OECD?
Sure, thanks for this question. I will echo some things that were said by my colleagues on this panel. I see three important areas where Central Asia has progress to do in terms of getting closer to OECD standards, creating a level playing field between state-owned enterprises and the private sector is more important than ever. We know that SOEs still benefit from preferential access to land, to financing. They usually benefit from tax benefits as well. So that's the first area where progress is happening, but perhaps a bit too slowly. The second aspect I would like to mention, and that my colleague Jean-Sébastien already mentioned, is about the importance of creating a predictable business environment. Having been following the region for the past few years, I can tell that about every 2 years, every country of the region needs to update its tax code. I doubt this is, this doesn't bring any clarity and predictability to SMEs. So bringing that kind of, ability to plan in the long term would be very important. Last but not least, accelerating the energy transition. We know that Central Asia is very prone to climate change and climate risks. Uzbekistan has been a leader in this field with the installment of renewable energy capacity at lightning speed. Is very impressive, but more needs to be done to mitigate the impact of climate change, especially in infrastructure investment, where we see a lot being done in railway development, road expansion, even port development on the Caspian Sea. Those long-term investments also need to account for climate change, because without them those investments will not be sustainable. So that would be the three areas I can see improvements being done. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I am already told that the next panel is waiting outside, so we have to round it up. Thank you. But yesterday, one important point, yesterday those who heard esteemed President, when we were talking about climate change, and there is a trade climate change happening today. And one very interesting concern he raised yesterday, telling that the defense spending in many economies are increasing sustainably. That is another interesting point of this changes what is happening. And at the same time, he said the investment is not only a driver for trade development, but also for peace and resilience. So let's take this positive note from the leader. And history shows that one important truth, no matter how things change, trade always finds its way. Business will grow, people will connect, and life will keep growing. So let's live, trade, love, and be happy. Thank you very much.
Very beautiful.
So we should